Welcome to this episode of The Absolute Sound on YouTube. Today we're going to talk about the Technics SU-G700M2 integrated amplifier. I hope you enjoy it. Today we're talking about the Technics SU-G700M2, which is an integrated amplifier priced at $28.99 in US dollars. It's an integrated amp that looks, in size at least, like any other integrated amplifier. I think the finish for $28.99 is actually exceptionally nice, but what we're here to talk about is the technology inside and whether that has an effect on sound quality. The technology here is really different, and I'm going to spend some time trying to unpack it to help you understand why I say it is different. It's not different from everything. This has been done before. NAD has a similar kind of amplifier. Technics has done amplifiers like this in the past. But when I heard it, I thought, wow, this is different enough that we need to walk backwards to what the underlying technology is. So let's talk about a few basics. It's a 120 watt per channel amplifier into 8 ohms, 210 watts per channel into 4 ohms. So it's got a decent amount of power, not, mind crushing, but plenty of power, especially if you're using it in a relatively small room and if you're using it with reasonably efficient speakers. I used the Golden Ear BRX and the Magnepan LRS Plus. The Magnepans are not very efficient, and I really didn't have any problems with them in a medium-sized room, so I kind of think you're good to go. Some people may listen louder than I do. I don't know. I think this is plenty of power for many people. But you be the judge of that. It's got a set of analog inputs and a set of digital inputs. It's got a phono preamp capable of handling moving magnet or moving coil cartridges. And it's got a headphone amplifier. It's got tone controls and VU meters, as you can see, a remote control, pretty standard stuff, I would say. Although my impression is that Technics has spent some extra time on every piece of this to make sure that as an integrated amplifier, it really delivers on all the parts that are in the box. I don't know about you, but sometimes I get the feeling that the phono preamp or the headphone amplifier may have been, I don't want to say an afterthought, but put in there as a feature more than as an audiophile piece. Here, I think there was really an attempt to make every element of this work at the audiophile level. Okay, but the secret sauce here, if there is a secret sauce, is not the feature set. The feature set is pretty conventional. The secret sauce here is that this is a digital amplifier. Now, Technics stresses, and I want to stress, that this is not a Class D amplifier. This is a digital amplifier. They say fully digital. We're going to unpack that too, because that isn't quite true either. But let's first start with the typical, and there are many topologies for Class D amplifiers, so we can't just wave our hands and cover them all. But the traditional technology that's used in Class D amplifiers, just like in Class A and Class AB amplifiers, the analog amplifiers that we're accustomed to, the Class D approach is fully analog. There's an analog input. The waveform is handled in analog fashion, although it is pulse width modulated, but the pulse widths are analog modulated. And there, of course, is an analog output, because you have to have an analog output because the speakers are analog, because, I don't know, I'm going to say your eardrums are analog. So At some point, we have to get back to analog. But what Technics is trying to do here, and what I think is really interesting about this amplifier, is they've tried to delay the point at which the signals you're using are converted to analog to the last possible moment. So let's consider, as a point of comparison, how you would normally do things. Normally, you would have, in today's world, a digital streaming source or a turntable, and that turntable would be fed into a preamplifier, a phono preamplifier as it happens, and that phono preamplifier would be fed into a preamp, and that preamp would have several gain stages, and that analog signal of the output of the preamp would go to a analog front end on the power amplifier, and then an analog driver stage, and then an analog output stage. What I'm trying to impress upon you is that there are a lot of analog stages used in a traditional high-end audio system. Fine. The industry has been at it for around 100 years to try to perfect these analog circuits, and the high-end audio industry is pretty good at it. Okay, so that's analog. The same thing is true if you're using a digital source, by the way. You start with a digital source, streaming, let's say, and you send it via USB input into a D to A converter. And that D to A converter takes an analog signal and puts that into a preamp, which runs through several gain stages that goes into the input of a power amp and goes through several gain stages to go to the output stage. And all of these stages from the DAC through to the loudspeaker are all analog. Fine. As I said, we know what we're doing when it comes to analog. But the Technics idea is different. Their idea is, well, most of the music that people are listening to today is digitally encoded. Let's try to use coded digital signals as long as we can. So what they, in essence, have done is they allow you to send your streaming signal into a series of digital circuits that process the signal and ultimately send it to a final power output stage with the D to A conversion right before that last stage. So the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 analog stages that we typically have in an audio system are reduced to essentially one. Is that a big deal? We'll come back in a moment to talk about sound quality. Just a brief interruption, esteemed viewers. As you may know, I'm Tom Martin, Chief Content Officer of The Absolute Sound. We have a new product. It's on the Substack platform, and we're going to do some interesting things with Substack. First of which is reader questions and answers. Each Monday, readers will submit questions. We'll pick the most interesting ones and we'll answer the questions on Friday. We'll also have early access to articles and special blogs that don't appear anywhere else. We hope you'll join us. It's only a cost of a cup of coffee per month. Just check on the screen or in the show notes below. Thanks, and now back to the show. When it comes to sound quality, I think the Technics SU-G700M2 is something special. Certainly, it's something special at this price point. It really gives you a taste of what the ultra high end is trying to do. The ultra high end is generally trying to do this in analog form, and for maybe a tenth the money or even less, you can get a sense of what's going on up there. What do I mean by that? Well, if you listen to a series of products at different technological states and different price points, one of the big things you come away with, especially when we're not talking about speakers, this is true with speakers too, but when we're not talking about transducers, so speakers and cartridges, the main issues we're talking about are not related to frequency balance or other parameters like that. They are related to how transparent or how clear or how revealing or how spotlit the musicians are. And what you start to realize as you go up the food chain is that you can listen to very good audio equipment that's very enjoyable, and I wouldn't stop you from enjoying it ever and suggest that you need something better. But then you find, oh, there's a next level, and then you peel the onion and you find, oh, there's a next level beyond that, and then you peel the onion and you find, oh, there's a next level beyond that. And this isn't to suggest that better goes to infinity, although there may be a long way to go before we really get to fully seeing the musicians as if they were actually on stage or in the studio. So what the SU-G700M2 does is it operates at a very high level of clarity where the musicians stand out in their own space and their instruments sound surprisingly real, and the tonal quality sounds like it's the tonal quality of the actual instrument without, and this is the key thing, without layering on some artifacts that make you think that maybe that sense of clarity is actually an etchy, zingy kind of addition to the sound that's there. This is like something has been removed and you can just see more clearly into the sound stage, see more clearly what the strings of the guitar are doing. Here, the hammer strikes on a piano more clearly, all of those kinds of things. Sorry to keep coming back to the word clarity, but it's that removal of something that's in between us. Visual analogies, I think, work quite well here. That is the stunning and impressive, and I found quite enjoyable thing here, because what that clarity gives you is it removes annoyances and it gives you a purity, and especially a purity of tone, that is really beautiful. So the Technics does a wonderful job of presenting instruments, and it starts by doing that in the bass. You think of clarity kind of as a high frequency thing, but it does it in the bass, and you start to realize that when you get powerful bass, a lot of times it is a little bit goosed up and you lose some definition. But here you get bass power and bass definition. And in the mid-range, it happens again, and you realize, oh, when you enrich in the mid-range by removing some of the layers of fuzz or whatever is subconsciously on the sound, you get a really more beautiful tonality. The singers are more wonderful, more gripping. It doesn't have to be, well, I said beautiful, but it doesn't have to be beautiful. It can be powerful, expressive, emotional, whatever the musicians are trying to do. It just comes through with a higher level of emotional impact. At high frequencies, I kind of found this effect to be maybe, I think some people would say, a mixed bag. My view is that the Technics isn't doing what I've heard with a lot of Class D amplifiers, which is putting a little bit of edge on board. No, I think it is so clear and so revealing that some of the errors in the recording chain are showing up. My bugaboo on this is, 1980s recordings that have, or 1990s recordings that have significant pre-ringing. Okay, look up pre-ringing if you don't know what it is, but it's an amusical phenomenon that I personally find quite annoying. It's subtle and low level, but once you hear it, you kind of can't unhear it, and it's part of the making of the recording. And I think that Technics is doing a very good job on some of these recordings of revealing that, and it's a little bit hard to say, well, I don't want that. Okay, sure. We're all consumers, so we want what we want. And some of you, therefore, might not love the treble of this amplifier on some high-frequency sounds with some older recordings. But when you get a good one, I listened to the Mahler Third, and wow, it was just fantastic. But I listened to Los Lobos. I'm a big Los Lobos fan, and I swear I could hear either a microphone overload kind of distortion or some pre-ringing going on. And it's there, but it's a little bit smoothed over and papered over with some other amplifiers. Anyway, as I say, you pick your poison, you pick your joy, and you get to choose with the Technics. I think as recordings get better and better, as more of what we're streaming is high res, which, I mean, there's a lot of high res out there now, we're going to find that this kind of amplification is the way to hear what is going on with those high-res recordings. By the way, the D to A conversion, which happens at that late stage that I was talking about here, it works with all the high-res formats that I'm aware of. There's probably something out there that it doesn't work with, but it goes up to 192K and can do SACD and all of those kinds of things. So this is a kind of amplifier that I think if you're on that train, you will love. Now, let me comment. I ran phono in, and this has an analog phono stage, which then goes into the whole stream of a to D converter, and then the full amplification process. And I thought it sounded very, very good as well. This amplifier, in a strange way, is a lovely complement to what vinyl does so well, and is part of the vinyl fun thing if you like collecting cartridges and switching cartridges and playing with analog in that way. You can get a lot of joy from this amplifier with fairly simple turntables as your input source. So I hope you get the idea that I think this is a very interesting amplifier technically, and I think the sound quality is something that almost everyone should hear, because this is really different. I don't think that difference is dramatic until you really pick up on it, and then you kind of, it's like the $200 bottle of wine. You better not taste it, or you sort of feel like you can't go back. And I think the two ways out of that are either some technology like this, or you start to go into the pretty high-end analog electronics. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this. As always, we would love it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can do that by clicking on the subscribe button, hitting the notification bell so you know when we've posted something new, which is several times a week. But we'd also like to invite you to join us on our newsletter, which comes out twice a week, and as well visit our website, which has lots of our reviews. And finally, for our flagship publication, please subscribe to the Absolute Sound magazine, which is available in print form or in digital form, so you can get it anywhere in the world on the day of publication. As I said, thank you. We're really glad you joined us, and we hope you enjoyed this video about the Technics SU-G700M2.